Hello and welcome back to another episode of a weekly Waypoint. Today we are playing Star Wars Battlefront 2, the newer one, but not the newest new one, that's actually the old one, and not the oldest one, that's also the new one, but the one in the middle, which is actually the newest one. Our main topic today is how the necessities of marketing have ruined the integrity of simple name-giving, title-making. Damn, I almost got through that sentence sounding intelligent. No, not really. We're playing Battlefront just because it's Star Wars Day. It's not Star Wars Day. Star Wars Day was yesterday, as of the time of recording, and 2 days ago, as of the time of you watching this, but I felt like playing it. And besides, every day is Star Wars Day when you're a Star Wars fan. Actually, that's not true. The Rise of Skywalker release day was not a Star Wars day for most Star Wars fans. I think that was something like a franchise-wide day of mourning. Anyway, I haven't been in a particularly Star Warsy mood lately, but with the Star Wars Day hitting on May the 4th, as it always does, funny how that works, I decided to go back and finish a LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, and by finish I mean just finish the main story missions, beat the game, not like complete it. That would be a whole bunch more work, which I am also going to get around to doing, but I got most of the work done on that. It was just that I was finding the Rise of Skywalker missions were reminding me of the Rise of Skywalker movie, which I somehow managed to enjoy kind of superficially in the moment the first time I watched it, but every single thought I've had about it since has revealed more flaws, and it's painful. Yeah, we don't need to go into it. We all have a shared trauma in Rise of Skywalker. Anyway, I went back through and I finished those levels, and I was reminded that, oh yeah, this is actually a really bloody good game, and I got a little bit fatigued because of just how much game it is back when it first came out. But yeah, I probably will just spend some time here and there grabbing some are they cyber crystals or are they cyber bricks or whatever they are, and slowly eking my way towards 100% completion in that game, which will take a while, but it is something I very much want to do. I have a weird problem with the Skywalker Saga LEGO game, where if you've ever been to Coruscant in that game in like the free roam mode, the little jaunty tune that plays as the backing track for that world just gets stuck in my head on an endless loop. I also reinstalled Star Wars The Old Republic and spun up a new character, not because I'm not enjoying my Sith Inquisitor, I am, very much, but I've just been so intrigued by the Republic Commando kind of like, I don't know how they handle their classes in terms of like, is that a class, I guess it's an origin story with a bunch of classes branching off of it. I noticed they've done a thing now where all like the Jedi, or like the 2 Jedi origin stories can kind of mix and match classes now, and the 2 kind of more like shooter, I guess, classes can mix and match origin stories now, so you can be like more of a sorcerer Jedi doing the Jedi Knight campaign, or you can be more of like a dual-wielding cowboy space blaster them up dude, but still be doing the Republic Commando story. I don't really know how that's gonna work, because of how story instancing works in that game, but hey, it's cool that it does. Star Wars The Old Republic is definitely a game which I worry about in terms of its health, because I'm like, you don't hear much about that game. I know it recently got put under the Broadsword Studios banner, which is kind of like a retirement home for MMOs, but it seems like they're still pushing out new content for that game. But I worry about it because I really enjoy it, and I want it to last forever. But one day I feel like that game is going to get shut down, and I won't have played for all of the story content I want to get to before it does, because it's a legitimately fantastic MMO in terms of like, if you like BioWare games with like the way they do their storytelling. Obviously this is based on the old Knights of the Old Republic RPGs by BioWare, you know, made by a slightly different team, but it's got like the dialogue wheel options and stuff. I've talked about this before, but I don't think Star Wars The Old Republic gets as much love as maybe it should. Yeah, and here's hoping it lasts forever. It's one of those MMORPGs where I'm like, I kind of wish this was just an RPG, because that's the only side of a game I've played so far, and it's a cracking RPG, and I hate that one day it just might not exist anymore. But I would say the actual bulk of my game time this week has been spent in World of Warcraft Cataclysm Classic, or as I like to call it, Classicism. You may have seen the video I put out yesterday, but if not, I kind of go over it in the video, but a lot of WoW Classic players are kicking up a fuss because, if you don't know, Cataclysm is an expansion that goes back and fundamentally reworks the vanilla zones of the game and updates them story-wise, and they're very much in the same state nowadays in the retail game, so people are arguing that Classic is dead. A lot of the design philosophies that people wanted to see a return to in Classic, they've also gone away with Cataclysm. It's kind of like a different era of the game. I would say WoW has 4 separate eras. I would say it's got Vanilla to Wrath of the Lich King. I would say it's then got Cataclysm to Warlords of Draenor. I would then say it's Legion to Shadowlands. And then I think from Dragonflight onwards is the 4th era that we're currently in. That is all pretty arbitrary, but I think you'll find a lot of people probably agreeing. So I can see where people are coming from in terms of Classic is over. However, Season of Discovery exists, which is vanilla on steroids. And then also Classic era technically exists if you just want to go back and level a character through vanilla. And also you've got the hardcore and self-found hardcore modes for those era servers as well. So it's not like back originally when Cataclysm first came out and you saw the first arguments really being made for we need Classic servers or a way to visit the quote-unquote old version of the world again. We do have those alternatives for people who want to go back and play it, but I do get what they mean. In an ideal world, I would prefer to have, your vanilla servers, your Burning Crusade servers, your Wrath servers, your Cataclysm servers, and just maybe have different seasons of season 1 cycling through the different patches, and then a year goes by and then season 2, and if they want to, they can just fucking do it again and roll new characters on new realms or whatever. But I see the problem there. The problem there is dividing the player base too much, and people are already arguing that they're doing that with all the different versions of WoW. So yeah. I would maybe argue just stick one realm up for the end state of each expansion for people who just want to level through that version of the game or something, and then take it at their own pace with the raids and stuff. But yeah, I don't know, maybe that's the solution. But anyway, I'm getting away from my point here. My point here is that I really started World of Warcraft during Mists of Pandaria, which is an expansion ahead of Cataclysm, but in terms of how they revitalize the old world, it very much feels like Cataclysm is new base game, and then Mists of Pandaria is the first expansion. That's how the game felt to me when I first played it. And there are some differences with how talents work and stuff, but for the most part, I've jumped into Cataclysm pre-patch without really thinking about it. I was like, oh well, I might as well give this a look. And I was struck by this intense nostalgia of I get that the live game doesn't look very different to this, but there are some subtle differences, and the way the game plays is quite different. And the way leveling up works and leveling zones and stuff work is quite different. And this is my World of Warcraft Classic, I think. This is how I first experienced the game. And, not one-to-one. I first played through as a druid, and I'm currently playing through as a demonology warlock, which is a class I wouldn't play for another few expansions. And I am noticing it has a fundamentally different design than it did when I first got around to it. But yeah, I basically just made a Worgen warlock, and I was like, I'll just level through. I'm not necessarily promising I'm going to get to endgame, but it has been bugging me that I've never leveled a classic character through to endgame. And I would like to have a classic character at endgame by the time LFR comes out, because for those of you who don't know, I guess I don't know why you would know, I'm not really a raider. I don't really possess the social skills or the attention span for raiding. So while there's a lot of people, screeching about the fact that LFR is going to be added to Classic with the Dragon Soul raid at the end of Cataclysm, I'm just like, why does it matter to you? I do not understand that argument of get rid of LFR, don't let it be added to the game. What is it removing from your experience if people like me are able to experience some form of raiding? I've always really enjoyed LFR raiding. Well, I say always. You know how LFR raiding can be, but yeah, looking for raiding, yeah, I have a fun time with. And it's little things as well, like they added the transmog system, but they made it work like it does in retail, so you don't just have to have a bank full of the items you want to transmog into and out of, which is how it worked when I started in Mists. So yeah, Cataclysm Classic pre-patch, sleeper hit for me, honestly. I'm not expecting this love affair with Cataclysm Classic to last too long, or at least not at the rate at which I'm currently playing the game, purely because in World of Warcraft Retail, I'm still very much looking forward to the Mists of Pandaria remix thing, which is a little different to just Mists of Pandaria Classic in a few ways. If you don't play WoW, it's going to be a really interesting way to re-experience that expansion's story, patch cadence and all. Well, not patch cadence, but patches and all. But also have it be like kind of a fun arcade mode where you like collect this new currency, and you can buy like rare mounts or like exclusive mounts and gear, and have these crazy upgrades, and upgrade your legendary cloak so that it gives you like massive XP buff, so you level up your alt characters who wear that same cloak really fast. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that most of all. And I will probably stop playing Cataclysm Classic when that comes out. But there's also the Dark Heart prologue story quests for the next expansion, which are coming out soon. So yeah, World of Warcraft, full gear, all of the time, many different versions, having a fun time with it. But obviously, like, if they're going to do Cataclysm Classic, you better believe they're going to do Mists of Pandaria Classic. Like, I think Warlords of Draenor is the real argument for, like, that's probably where they stop doing Classic. But even then, the general idea I've seen is to have a much faster phase sequence, I guess is how you would say that, for Cataclysm, so that you get through it faster, because they know less people like Cataclysm. But I've always said this from the very start of Classic, I want them to just re-release all of the expansions. Like, I don't know how it's going to work in the long run, because at the rate that they're going, they will eventually catch up to retail, and that's not ideal. But like, maybe just go back and cycle through them again at a certain point. Like, always have different ways of playing the game through older expansions, so that people who weren't around, because this came out when they were kids, can actually experience it for themselves. So it's a weird way of doing game preservation. It's a weird problem to solve, but I'm glad that it is at least being addressed, as opposed to what we had before, which was absolutely bloody nothing. It's a little exhausting to remember how we had literally nothing before, and now we have all these, not only Classic, but all of these different versions of Classic, and people are being toxic online, shocker, about the fact that the current basic version of Classic isn't an expansion that they don't like. It's like, okay, cool, you realize they've catered to you with other things. You don't need to be here. I don't want to be playing around on these Cataclysm servers and just see the general chat being spammed full of haters. Like, why are you here? Go do something else. Like, okay, I get it to an extent, like, a character that they've invested a lot of hours into has now been thrust into this era of a game they don't like, but still, come on. Speaking of being toxic online, I've been getting pretty tired with kind of like gaming discourse lately, even when people are complaining about actually valid things, like the Helldivers situation, which did turn out to be a lot more valid when Sony actually tried to go through with it, and now they've just gone back on that today. But I went on a bit of a rant on Twitter, which I'm not going to repeat here. Maybe I did repeat it initially in the first draft of this video, and then I watched it back and went, probably best to talk about it when I'm in a better mood. But the essence of it is basically, and this isn't related to the Helldivers thing, this is more related to critical reception to games like Starfield and expectations from them and that kind of thing, and expectations from things like the next gen update Fallout 4. I feel like gamers have such a ridiculously high bar of success when it comes to like whether a game is good or not, or they get so wrapped up in what I would call internet truth, that they believe things are a certain way, and it doesn't really match up with reality. And I feel like, basically, it's not necessarily fair to put it into this simplified way, but I feel like the internet is gaslighting me into trying to make me believe that games are worse than they are. Another way of saying that is maybe I'm just more easily pleased than other people, and that's something that legitimately bothers me, because as someone who wants to be a writer of successful novels, I want to be able to have a good critical eye when it comes to narrative and entertainment, and be able to establish what makes something good and what makes something bad, because if I can't do that, then I'm more likely to fall into trapfalls in my own storytelling and my own creations. But just more and more and more, like, I'm currently reading through Boruto, and all I hear about Boruto is how bad it is. I'm like 40 chapters into Boruto. That shit is fantastic. I really enjoyed what I watched of the Avatar The Last Airbender live action show, but I actually got so distracted by the kind of discourse about how that show wasn't it, that it kind of put me off of watching the show, which is really dumb and clearly indicates that I care too much about what other people think, but it really did put me off of it. There was also a little bit of my usual, I'm halfway through a thing and I've lost interest or motivation in finishing it. You know, there's the usual elements at play as well. It's not just entirely the online discourse, but still. All of these thoughts kind of culminated when I was listening to a podcast, which I really enjoy. But one of the hosts made like a 20-minute rant, it felt like. Maybe it wasn't, but it felt that way, about how after the next gen update of Fallout 4 on his PC, Load screens took an entire 5 to 6 seconds, and that wasn't acceptable. That was embarrassingly bad, etc., etc. And I never considered this person who was going on this rant to be one of those people who you would expect to hear this kind of thing from, which I would classify as kind of like a toxic online rant about an inconsequential thing. So that's what really made me stop and reevaluate, like, what the hell are we doing here? Why are we getting so upset about 6-second load screens? When it comes to that specific example as well, like, I'm always of the opinion of, if it's a next-gen console optimization update, why are you expecting to get a massive optimization change on PC? Surely, how long loading screens are on PC is going to conform to the capabilities of your PC. I know at this point I'm replying to someone who doesn't even watch my stuff, but still. Call it a little vent. I had to listen to 20 minutes of this, and I didn't have to, but I listened to 20 minutes of this, and I was so annoyed by it. I also heard about how Skyrim still has terrible loading times all these years later, and then I think back to the literal video evidence I have of being able to teleport the entirety of the way across the map, and it taking like less than half of a second in terms of a loading screen. So again, PC capability versus console optimization update, kind of wild. But yeah, to bring things back on track, that's what got me in the mood of thinking about gamer discourse. We also had the whole Stellar Blade thing recently, which was really fucking stupid. It made me wistful for the time when I was a kid, and you know, the internet wasn't quite what it was today, and I was playing my PS1 games and PS2 games, and some of them were absolute trash, but I enjoyed them, and I didn't have anyone on the internet to tell me how bad they were, and that was a more pure form of a joyful experience from gaming, I think. It's probably also worth pointing out that I wasn't obsessive about my ability to critically evaluate the games I was playing either, so it's not all the internet's fault. And I like to think that what I do here on a weekly Waypoint is kind of an example that I wish the rest of the internet would follow, as if I was some example setter. But I feel like on this show I mostly just talk about games I like and what I like about the games that I'm playing, and that's kind of the energy that I look for in other podcasts and stuff like that. Like, yes, I like that the podcasts I follow have a news section, because it helps me keep up on what's going on in terms of like what games are being developed, what studios are being bought up or dissolved, and what that might mean for the future of gaming and the development of technologies and the emergence of new genres, and that stuff's fun to keep up with. But I don't do gaming news on my show, because it's also a lot of, did you hear about the controversy surrounding Stellar Blade? Who fucking cares? The algorithm cares, and I've seen creators that I really like put out videos with, they would argue against the term misleading, but thumbnails and titles which would suggest that they have a negative opinion, and then you watch the video and it turns out that they have a positive opinion about a game that they're talking about. And it's like, almost like, oh, I have a problem with this, and it's like, it's okay, because I'm just being ironic. But they're having to resort to that to get the clicks, and I think all of that just feeds back into this problem of, you know, the same problem press media has of negativity sells, negativity gets clicks, and we're just in an endless downward spiral of everything is awful. And like I said earlier about internet truth versus reality, I think about the recent Kinda Funny interview with Todd Howard, and they were like, oh, we know, you know, your team has been super transparent about what Starfield meant to them. How did they cope with the critical reception? And Todd was like, we got 9 out of 10s and it was played by millions. It was a great critical reception. He didn't say it as defensively sounding as that, and of course there's more sides to it. The user score on Metacritic, for example, is a lot lower than the critical score. But it just reminds me of like, oh, right, you know, the Bethesda that everyone talks about isn't the Bethesda that actually exists. Of course, there's probably some, you could argue like, oh, well, Todd would want you to think that everything is sunshine and roses at Bethesda, but this is another thing that really gets me. I worry about being a naive person, because I tend to believe things like that. Like, a while ago, Preach went to Blizzard and talked to a lot of developers there about why WoW was in the state it was at the time, and you know, at the time on the internet, people had a lot of ideas about what Blizzard was like, and again, you could argue bias, the version of Blizzard that was prepared for Preach or whatever, but I tend to believe the developers when they were talking about like, you know, the state the game was in and what they were going to do to address it, and they did address it, so I got proven right on that front, but B, like, the fact that you don't go there and it's not like a cathedral of evil with spikes everywhere and people being, you know, I was going to say mistreated, but that's in the past, and that is a thing that did happen, but, you know, I feel like, you know, with a Rooster Teeth ending stream as well, they were talking about how close-knit they all were, and you could really get the sense of everyone caring, and the version of Rooster Teeth that the internet built up definitely wasn't the version of Rooster Teeth that I saw on their ending stream. So yeah, multiple examples of just like the version of a thing that the internet builds up based on their most cynical, lowest opinions that everyone just starts to believe as fact, versus the actual version of the thing, which is still the thing that you liked to begin with, it just happened to fail at certain points. So yeah, I know talking about this stuff isn't going to change anything, and it's going to continue to get worse, but maybe the way that I approach it can change, maybe the way that I feel about it can change, maybe I can stop believing the internet truths as much, because I don't want to feel naive, and so when I see people being cynical, I do kind of want to follow them instinctively. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this episode of Weekly Waypoint. Let me know what you thought down below. It was another long episode, they're not all going to be this long, but I will see you in whatever I make next.